From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Bob Kinzel, filling in for Mitch Wertlieb. It's Thursday, February 27th, and here are today's headlines. Some Vermont lawmakers are ramping up pressure on Democratic leaders to establish a state income tax exemption for military pensions. Republican Governor Phil Scott has spent the past 8 years pressing lawmakers to grant this tax break. He says the exemption would make Vermont a more attractive destination for young military retirees. But House Majority Leader Lori Houghton says a blanket exemption would provide tax breaks to Vermonters who don't necessarily need them.
And that is still our major concern, especially in today's time when there are so much need in Vermont, and there's about to be a lot more depending on what comes from the federal government.
A tripartisan majority of Vermont lawmakers have signed on as sponsors to bills that would create the exemption, and many of them held a press conference yesterday urging legislative leaders to get on board with the proposal. U.S. Representative Becca Balint says a new House Republican budget plan is a betrayal of the needs of low and middle-class families. The bill passed the House Tuesday night largely along party lines. It allocates $4.5 trillion for tax cuts, and it calls for a reduction of $2 trillion in program cuts over the next decade. While the legislation doesn't include any details, GOP leaders say they want to extend Trump tax cuts that were enacted in 2017 because they're set to expire. And they're targeting Medicaid and several food assistance programs for significant reductions to help pay for the tax cuts. Speaking on the House floor, Balint strongly opposed the bill.
They have proposed a budget that gives massive tax cuts to the wealthiest and corporations in this country. I'm thinking about the 150,000 Vermonters who are dependent on Medicaid.
Several moderate Republicans who voted for the bill say they could withdraw their future support if efforts are made to make major cuts to Medicaid. On Tuesday, voters in Highgate, Fletcher, and Orwell will weigh whether all-terrain vehicles should be allowed on town roads. Specifically, the towns are asking voters whether their select boards should craft ordinances opening up access for ATVs, which are not allowed on town roads unless towns explicitly permit them. Tommy O'Connor is with the Vermont ATV Sportsmen's Association. He says voters should think hard about whether their town has the resources to support ATV use, including providing signs and enforcing regulations.
Do you have the budget to maintain the roads? Because just like motor vehicles, any type of traffic is going to do some type of, I don't like the word damage, but they're going to, show wear and tear on the roads, particularly if they're dirt, class 4, things like that.
ATV use on town roads has proven controversial in some parts of Vermont for that reason, along with their noise. Meanwhile, proponents say it's a great outdoor activity that draws out-of-state visitors to spend money in rural communities. The Stowe Foliage Arts Festival will not return this fall after a storm created huge problems for last year's festival. In October, high winds blew down the festival's big top tent, destroying thousands of dollars worth of arts and crafts. WCAX reports that as organizers began to plan this year's festival, few artists signed up, and other tent companies did not want to participate. They were also worried about liability. Festival organizers plan to meet with the town of Stowe to discuss future options. And coming up, the spread of bird flu across the country is causing some Vermont poultry farmers to take action. More on that right after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from VITA, supporting business growth and innovation in the Green Mountain State. From agriculture to manufacturing, energy to food production, find solutions that turn your business dreams into reality. Visit VEDA.org and see how VITA can help make it happen.
For many farmers, the risk of bird flu is especially serious this year. That's amid fears that the virus might spread to dairy cattle in the state. Vermont Public's Lexi Krupp has more from farmers who are changing their practices to guard their animals against the disease.
Just started talking to people I have some younger birds that I'm gonna sell.
Earlier this month, Hannah Pierce started making plans to get rid of about 30 chickens she raises for eggs.
Hopefully I'll be able to give most of them away. I might have to cull some.
She runs Hillside Farm in Albany with her dad. Their farm is surrounded by woods. It borders a beaver pond where wild ducks and geese often visit. Most of their business is growing chickens and turkeys for meat. They've always had egg-laying chickens too, but not this year.
They're not enclosed, so there's more chances for wild birds to be interacting with them or their food, or it seems like an unnecessary risk.
It's a risk because those wild birds could be carrying bird flu. And if just one chicken or turkey on the farm got sick,
we would need to kill all the birds on our farm, which in the middle of the season is like over 2,000 birds.
They get really, really sick. There are high levels of mortality. It's why we do the depopulation technique, is because it is a very aggressive disease in our bird populations.
Dr. Kate Levine is a vet with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. The virus causing this aggressive disease has actually been around for decades, but a more contagious strain has been spreading in wild birds in North America for the past 3 years, including in Vermont. 2 backyard flocks tested positive earlier this winter. And it spread to a bunch of different animals. In the Northeast, seals in Massachusetts, foxes in New York, and a bobcat in Vermont have all died. Across the country, the virus started showing up in dairy cows in the past year. Luckily, in cows, it hasn't been as deadly.
They have milk changes. They have a decreased milk production. They may get fevers and have some mild respiratory signs. Basically, they get the flu.
So far, bird flu hasn't been detected in any cows in Vermont or anywhere in New England. No farm workers or any other Vermonters have gotten sick either. And the state is looking for this virus. Earlier this year, Vermont started testing milk from every grade A dairy farm in the state that sends its milk for pasteurization. Until bird flu is detected on a dairy farm, Dr. Kate Levine says the biggest risk from the virus is probably still to farmers with birds, especially those who raise their animals on pasture, like Keith Drinkwine, a Flatlander farm in South Starksboro.
At this point, it's a gamble. We're hedging our bets for sure, but it's definitely a roll of the dice.
He's scaling back his meat bird operation this year and raising more egg-laying chickens, partly as a market response. The price of eggs is high, and because his birds are slaughtered and butchered on an outside farm.
All of the uncertainty and the risk factor of transporting birds to another poultry farm for us and for them just doesn't. It seems unnecessary this year.
At Hillside Farm in Albany, they're still planning to raise plenty of meat birds. But this year, they're asking people who have chickens not to visit their farm. They're adding more boot cleaning protocols. And starting in the spring, Hannah will walk her dogs over to the beaver pond every day to chase away the geese. It's a big shift in how she thinks about working with the natural world.
Now it's like that stress of like, okay, we have to actually discourage all those animals from being around. It's like more of a fear of what the harm they could bring.
But they'll take it like farmers, day by day. For Vermont Public, I'm Lexi Krupp.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Peter Hirschfeld, Abigail Giles, and Nathaniel Wilson. Our executive producer is Kevin Trevelyan, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Bob Kinzel. Talk to you later.